She gave up her plane ticket for a sleep-deprived father holding a screaming baby, never expecting to see him again. He promised to repay her kindness, never imagining she'd walk into his boardroom days later as his newest hire. She thought it was a small sacrifice. He thought it was a moment of mercy. Neither of them knew it was the beginning of something that would change their lives, and one little boy's future forever. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The terminal buzzed with the usual pre-boarding chaos. Rolling suitcases, murmured phone calls, the distant hum of a late flight announcement. Amelia Hart sat near gate C-22 with her laptop balanced on her knees, trying to finish one last email before boarding. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her eyes tired, and the coffee in her hand had long gone cold. She had just wrapped up a brutal 3-day conference in Chicago, where she'd pitched her marketing strategy to a crowd of half-interested executives. Her flight back home had already been delayed twice, and she was desperate to get some rest before starting her new job in 3 days. Her name was finally called over the intercom, but before she could gather her things, a sharp cry rang through the terminal. A baby, piercing, desperate, and unmistakably tired. Amelia looked up. A man stood near the check-in counter, gently bouncing a red-faced baby against his chest. He was tall, clearly strong, but there was a fragility to his posture, a man trying to hold everything together. His shoulder carried a diaper bag, his blazer hung unevenly off one arm, and there was a bottle half-tucked into the back pocket of his jeans. The gate agent called out again. Last standby passenger for Flight 681 to New York. Seat 12B. Step forward now. Amelia hesitated. She glanced at her boarding pass. 12B. She was the last passenger they were clearing. But the man with the baby looked like he was about to fall apart. "I'm sorry," he was saying to the agent. "I've been on standby for hours. I need to be in New York tonight." "I have." He stopped, bouncing the baby a little more. "Please." The baby began to scream louder, red-faced and inconsolable. The agent looked uncertain. "We only have one seat left," she said, glancing at both him and Amelia. "You were both on the same standby tier. Whoever steps forward first gets it." Amelia took one long look at the man. His eyes met hers. They were stormy with exhaustion, and yet vulnerable. Without thinking, she stepped back. "Give it to him," she said to the agent. "Are you sure?" the woman asked. "You've been waiting just as long." Amelia nodded, smiling faintly. "He needs it more than I do." The man stared at her, stunned. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice cracking a little. She shrugged. "You've got a little CEO there demanding answers. Go." He let out a soft, disbelieving laugh, then adjusted the baby in his arms and stepped forward. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "Really. I'm so behind on everything right now and I just—" He stopped himself and looked at her with genuine warmth. "I'll pay this forward. Or maybe even back. Somehow." Amelia smiled, already gathering her things to find a seat and rebook. "Get some rest when you land," she said. "Both of you." As he disappeared down the jet bridge, the baby finally quieted. Amelia watched them go, something about the moment lingering longer than she expected. She didn't know his name. She hadn't asked. She just knew he looked like a man standing at the edge, and something about giving him that seat felt like the right thing to do. She didn't expect to ever see him again, and she certainly didn't expect that the next time she would, he'd be holding more than just a baby. He'd be holding her future. The Sullivan estate stood at the edge of the Hudson, a sprawling modern fortress of glass and stone that overlooked the river like a watchtower. Inside, however, the air was thick with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that weighs on a man's chest when he's alone in a house too large for one. Nathan stood at the edge of the nursery, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, gently rocking the crib with one hand while the other massaged his temple. The baby, Max, was finally asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in a soft rhythm that offered Nathan a moment of stillness. But his thoughts, they were anything but still. It had only been 2 weeks since his father passed. 2 weeks since Nathan had gone from being the quiet heir of Sullivan Enterprises to the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar legacy overnight. He hadn't had time to grieve. He hadn't had time to breathe. The board meetings came swiftly. Lawyers, publicists, investors, all crowding into his calendar like vultures. And then there was her, Vanessa, his wife, or ex-wife now. He still wasn't sure which word hurt more. She hadn't even looked back. The conversation still echoed in his head. "I can't do this anymore," she'd said, sitting cross-legged on the marble kitchen counter, sipping green juice while the nanny held Max in the other room. "This isn't the life I signed up for." Nathan had stared at her, stunned. "You're talking about our son." "I'm talking about me," she replied, calm and calculated. "You've become your father, obsessed with work, never present, always burdened. I want to live, Nathan. I want freedom. I'm not built to be someone's wife and definitely not someone's mother." Then she left. Not in anger, not in tears, just in indifference. He hadn't seen her since. She signed the custody papers the next day with barely a note. "I'll be wiring my things to LA. Please don't make this difficult. I wish you well." So there he was. A father, a CEO, and an utterly exhausted man, juggling board reports with diaper changes, press releases with midnight feedings, trying to figure out how to do the job of 2 parents, a grieving son, and a businessman all at once. Earlier that day, he'd nearly missed the emergency shareholders meeting scheduled in New York. He had flown out to attend an urgent supplier negotiation in Chicago, assuming he'd have just enough time to get back. But flight delays, a colicky Max, and a broken stroller had thrown everything into disarray. When he finally got to the airport and was told the flight was full, his heart sank. The meeting was too important. Missing it could rattle confidence in his leadership before he even had a chance to prove himself. And then she appeared. The woman at the gate. The one who gave up her ticket. He hadn't even caught her name. But her face stayed with him. Kind worn yet calm. There was no hesitation when she offered him her seat. No self-pity, no awkwardness. Just grace. It had shaken him. As he finally lowered himself into the armchair by Max's crib, Nathan closed his eyes. For a brief second, the weight on his chest eased. Not because things were better, but because someone had reminded him that goodness still existed in the world. Small acts of kindness, quiet sacrifices, they mattered. He made a mental note to find her somehow. To repay her. Not because he owed her, but because it reminded him of the kind of man he wanted to be. The kind his father believed he could become. The kind Max deserved. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, the baby slept. And Nathan sat in silence, surrounded by wealth, burdened by legacy, but moved, for the first time in weeks, not by duty, but by gratitude. Amelia adjusted the collar of her navy blue blouse as the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The glass walls of Sullivan Enterprises towered over Midtown Manhattan like a statement. Clean lines, quiet power, and polished excellence. She stepped into the 42nd floor, headquarters. The lobby was striking, with marble floors that echoed softly beneath her heels. A statement chandelier of hand-blown glass catching morning light above a waterfall wall. Everyone around her moved with silent urgency. Tailored suits, clipped voices, high-speed confidence. She exhaled slowly. This was the opportunity she had waited for. Fought for. After years of pushing through mid-tier marketing agencies, being talked over in meetings, and cleaning up the messes of mediocre men who got promoted ahead of her, this was the job. A strategic role at one of the most powerful companies in the country. It felt like winning a ticket to the life she had worked to earn. And yet, her stomach fluttered. A nervous energy, not dread, just anticipation. A sleek brunette in a fitted gray skirt suit greeted her at the reception desk. "You must be Amelia Hart," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Jessica, Mr. Sullivan's executive assistant. We're thrilled to have you on board." "Thank you," Amelia said, returning the smile. "It's still sinking in." Jessica gave a knowing look. It usually takes a few weeks. You'll meet your department head after the all-staff welcome briefing. We're just heading into the boardroom now. Follow me. As they walked down the corridor, Amelia's heels clicking lightly behind Jessica's confident stride, her eyes took in every detail. The rows of glass offices, the hanging art pieces, the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a world she had only ever brushed the edges of. Now she was walking into its heart. They entered a grand boardroom with a long walnut table, sunlight spilling in through tall windows. Staff were gathering, some new like her, some clearly veterans. Chatter filled the space, casual but charged with that corporate edge. Jessica leaned in. "You're in luck. Mr. Sullivan is making an appearance. He doesn't always attend these. But since his father's passing, he's been more involved. It's a new era." Before Amelia could reply, the door at the far end opened. He entered with a presence that made the room fall instantly quiet. Tall, sharply dressed in a dark gray suit that hugged his frame like it was tailored this morning. A baby carrier rested against his chest, cradling a drowsy infant whose fist clung to the lapel of his father's jacket. Nathan Sullivan walked in like a man who had survived fire and come out forged. Amelia blinked, breath caught midair. It's him. It was the man from the airport. The man with the baby. The one she'd given her ticket to and never expected to see again. He scanned the room with casual poise until his gaze landed on her. His posture faltered, just slightly. His eyes widened in recognition. A subtle flicker of surprise and something else, something unspoken, passed between them. He stepped forward slowly, addressing the room with effortless authority. "Good morning. Thank you all for being here." His voice was calm but carried weight. His baby stirred, and he instinctively adjusted the strap, resting a hand on the small back with unconscious tenderness. "I know many of you are adjusting to recent changes," he continued. "As am I. I won't pretend to have all the answers. But I can promise you this. This company was built on vision, resilience, and people who saw opportunity where others saw limits. I plan to honor that." A few heads nodded. Others remained still, assessing. He paused, then glanced again at Amelia. "Before I let your department heads take over, I'd like to personally acknowledge someone here," he said. "Amelia Hart, if I'm not mistaken?" Every head turned. Amelia straightened in her seat, startled. "Yes, sir?" A small, knowing smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. "We met briefly. At an airport. You gave up a seat you desperately needed, for someone you didn't know. You had no idea who I was. You just saw someone struggling and chose kindness." The room murmured, surprised. Nathan continued, his voice quieter now, sincere. "In the chaos of transition, I remembered that moment. And it reminded me of the kind of culture I want to build here. One based on empathy, not ego. Collaboration, not competition." He looked directly at her. "I never got to say thank you, Amelia. You made a difference that day." Amelia's cheeks flushed. She nodded, speechless. The baby let out a soft coo, drawing a ripple of gentle laughter across the room. Nathan smiled faintly, resting his hand again on the baby's chest. "Now, if you'll excuse me," he said, stepping back, "some of us have nap time negotiations to get through." As he left the room, his assistant swooping in to take Max from his arms, Amelia sat frozen. The world around her buzzed back into motion, but her mind was still locked on the collision of past and present. She had come here expecting a job. She never expected him. And she definitely never expected that this man, the stressed, grateful father from Gate C22, would become something far more important than a CEO in her life. The office was mostly empty when Amelia stepped into the 37th floor lounge, the city's lights glittering behind her through tall glass walls. It was nearly 9 p.m., and most of the staff had long since gone home. All except one. Nathan Sullivan sat on the couch, jacket tossed over the side, sleeves rolled up, cradling Max against his chest. A bottle sat half-finished on the table next to him. Max had drifted to sleep mid-feed, his tiny hand resting on the placket of his father's shirt. Nathan looked up as Amelia entered, caught somewhere between tired and grateful. I thought I was the only one burning the midnight oil, she said softly. He offered a crooked smile. You and me both. And him, he added, nodding toward the baby. Apparently babies don't care about corporate hours. Amelia stepped closer, placing a paper cup in front of him. Coffee. Black. Thought you might need a refill. You read minds? He asked, picking it up. Or just good instincts? I'm a strategist, she said with a shrug, then sat across from him. We read behavior. He chuckled quietly. Well, your analysis was spot on. I was about 5 minutes away from falling asleep with him in the copy room. She glanced at Max, now gently snoring. He's beautiful. Nathan's eyes softened. He really is. He doesn't even know the chaos he was born into. And yet somehow he's the only thing keeping me sane. Amelia hesitated before speaking again. It's a lot. Running a company. Raising a child. Doing both at once. He looked away for a moment. The silence between them stretched, not awkward, just heavy with unspoken truths. I didn't ask for any of it to happen like this, he said at last. Not losing my father. Not the company. And definitely not becoming a single parent overnight. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was grounding. My ex, Vanessa, she walked out right before Dad died, he continued, voice low. Said she wanted a life without responsibilities. Without being tied down. I didn't fight her. I couldn't. There was too much going on. Too much I didn't understand. She left you with all of it, Amelia said gently. He nodded, his jaw clenched. I thought I could handle it. But there are days I feel like I'm just grasping at everything. Trying to be everywhere at once. Baby formula in one hand, balance sheets in the other. Amelia smiled softly. You're doing better than you think. Nathan looked at her, eyes tired but searching. How do you know? Because you care, she replied. And because you're here. Feeding him. Holding him. Showing up. That's more than a lot of people do. He studied her for a moment. You always speak like that? Like what? Like you see past people's armor. She tilted her head. Maybe. Or maybe I just know what it's like to carry more than anyone can see. There was a long pause after that. Neither of them filled it. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, bright and alive. But in that room, it felt like the world had narrowed down to a couch, a sleeping baby, and two people who had collided by chance but stayed by choice. Nathan leaned back, shifting Max gently to rest against his shoulder. You know, before I saw you at the company, I honestly thought I'd imagined you. The airport, it was such a blur. I was a mess. I barely remember the gate number. It was C-22, she said with a small smile. He laughed under his breath. Of course you remember. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, she admitted. But I thought about that moment a lot afterward. Why? Because you looked like a man at the end of his rope. And I know what that feels like. He nodded slowly. I was. That day was the worst one I'd had in years, until you stepped aside and gave me a way forward. You didn't even know me. You didn't need me to know you, she said. You just needed someone to care. Nathan looked down at Max again, who shifted slightly in his sleep. Then he looked back up at Amelia, his expression quieter now, gentler. I don't know what this is yet, this connection. But it doesn't feel like something I want to ignore. Amelia blinked, caught off guard by the raw honesty of his words. Her voice was softer now. Neither do I. They sat there, letting the moment breathe. Max let out a tiny sigh in his sleep, as if echoing their unspoken thoughts. Nathan shifted slightly, brushing a hand over his son's back, then glanced at Amelia again. I'm glad you're here, he said. So am I, she replied. The silence returned, but this time it was calm. Comfortable. Like the beginning of something that didn't need to be rushed or named just yet. In a high-rise building where fortunes were made and power traded hands like currency, two people sat quietly, tethered by an unexpected act of kindness and the soft, sleeping weight of a child who didn't yet know he was the center of something beautiful unfolding. The conference room was full, but Amelia barely noticed the dozen executives sitting across from her. She was too focused on the numbers glowing across the projection screen. her numbers, her ideas. Her voice, steady and clear, filled the room as she presented the quarterly growth plan for Sullivan Enterprises' newest initiative, a socially conscious brand partnership model that redirected a percentage of revenue into women-led startups. It was bold, it was fresh, and most of all, it was hers. Not only does this reduce long-term acquisition costs, but it aligns the company with evolving consumer values, she said, clicking to the final slide. By tapping into purpose-driven branding, we're not just following the market, we're leading it. Silence followed, and then slow clapping. Nathan, seated at the head of the table with Max bouncing quietly in a baby carrier at his feet, leaned forward. "That's the most compelling strategy I've seen in this boardroom in months," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Make it happen." The other executives exchanged looks, some impressed, others not quite ready to accept the influence of a newcomer. One, a silver-haired VP named Aldridge, spoke up. "It's a little idealistic, isn't it? Redefining brand strategy based on social cause? We're in the business of profit." Amelia didn't flinch. "And profit is driven by relevance. This isn't idealism. It's adaptation. Do nothing, and our competitors beat us there first." Nathan smiled. She had fire. The kind that didn't beg for space but earned it. "She's right," he said, cutting through the murmurs. "Our legacy can't rely on outdated thinking. Sullivan Enterprises built its name on forward motion. Let's not lose it to fear." The meeting broke shortly after, with a few execs reluctantly nodding, others whispering amongst themselves. Amelia gathered her things, trying not to let the adrenaline show in her hands. As she packed up, Nathan walked over, lifting Max from the carrier and gently settling him against his shoulder. "You owned that room," he said, smiling. "Thank you," she replied, catching her breath. "I didn't think Aldridge would ever unclench." He chuckled. "Aldridge is a relic. You'll be replacing him one day." Amelia arched a brow. "That a promise or a threat?" "Depends how much sleep I get tonight," he joked, bouncing Max gently. The baby yawned and reached toward Amelia, tiny fingers stretching toward her necklace. "Looks like someone wants my job," she said, letting Max tug playfully at the chain. Nathan watched her for a moment, the amusement fading into something quieter. "He likes you. A lot." She looked up. "He's not the only one, is he?" Silence. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at his son, then at her, then somewhere past both of them, as if weighing 1,000 things he still didn't know how to say. "Amelia," he began, voice low, but before he could speak, a voice rang out from the other side of the room. "Nate." They both turned. Standing in the doorway, heels clicking against the marble, was Vanessa. She was dressed in high-end athleisure and a designer leather coat that looked as if it had been flown in from Milan. Her hair was salon perfect, her makeup subtle but sharp. And her eyes, those sharp, unreadable eyes, went straight to Nathan and then to Amelia. Nathan stiffened. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa smiled, cold and polished. "Can a woman visit her child?" "You haven't seen him in 4 months, Nathan said flatly. "I've been busy," she replied, walking into the room like she owned it. "Besides, I needed space. To think. To heal. To party in Ibiza and be photographed with your new boyfriend?" Amelia asked before she could stop herself. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Ah, you must be the help." Nathan stepped between them, voice hardening. "That's enough. Say what you came to say." Vanessa's tone shifted, less flippant now, more pointed. "I want shared custody." Nathan's expression didn't change, but his shoulders tensed. "No, you don't get to decide that alone. I do when you abandoned him," he said. "You don't get to come back and play mother because your lifestyle brand fell apart." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't answer. Instead, she turned her gaze to Amelia. "You're sleeping with her, aren't you?" The room went still. "No," Nathan said slowly. "But maybe I will." Vanessa blinked, surprised for once. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Good luck with that," she said, then turned on her heel and walked out without another word. Silence settled again. Max cooed softly, unaware of the weight in the air. Amelia folded her arms, trying to steady herself. That was not what I expected today. Nathan looked at her, eyes full of storm and regret. I'm sorry you got pulled into this. I'm not, she said quietly. You stood up for yourself. For Max. Nathan exhaled and looked down at his son. I used to wonder what kind of man I'd become. If I'd just inherit my father's name, or if I'd build something of my own. Turns out, everything I needed to become that man showed up when I least expected it. She looked at him then deeply and realized it wasn't just about business anymore. This wasn't about boardrooms or babies or corporate growth strategies. This was about two broken lives slowly fitting together in ways that made both of them stronger. Not lovers yet, not even quite partners, but something was building, something too powerful to ignore. The Sullivan brownstone in the West Village was a relic of old New York. Ornate crown molding, wide-planked floors, and a staircase that creaked ever so slightly at the third step. It stood in contrast to the sleek, cold sharpness of the company headquarters. Where the office demanded perfection, the brownstone whispered stories of imperfect, lived-in love. Nathan hadn't hosted anyone there in months. Until tonight. Amelia arrived holding a small paper bag of pasta and a bottle of wine. The weather had cooled, and the city was in that golden moment of autumn. Leaves crisp beneath your shoes, the air tinged with the scent of change. Nathan greeted her at the door, sleeves pushed up, a dish towel slung over his shoulder like he'd forgotten it was there. You brought backup, he said with a smile, eyeing the food. I didn't trust you not to burn down your own kitchen, she replied. He stepped aside to let her in. The house smelled faintly of rosemary and garlic, surprisingly pleasant, and a soft instrumental playlist played in the background, something with piano and strings. Max was sprawled in the living room on a blanket, gurgling and kicking at a plush giraffe. He's clean, Nathan said proudly. Bathed, fed, diaper changed. You're witnessing the eighth wonder of the world. Amelia laughed and knelt beside the baby. And you didn't lose your mind? Just briefly, around the shampoo part. She scooped Max into her arms effortlessly, cooing at him. He's getting so big. He likes you more than most of my board members, Nathan said as he leaned in the doorway, watching her. He has good taste, she said, her tone light, but her eyes were soft, vulnerable. The evening unfolded without pretense. They ate together in the small dining room, passing plates, laughing over childhood stories, interrupted by Max's periodic squeals of delight. Nathan confessed he'd tried to learn how to braid hair as a kid to impress his babysitter. Amelia admitted she once applied for a job at Sullivan Enterprises 5 years ago and never even got a rejection email. That's embarrassing, Nathan said. Want me to fire someone retroactively? Tempting, she replied, grinning. Later, the three of them settled in the living room, Max tucked between them on the couch. A baby book lay open on the coffee table, pages filled with first smiles and footprints. Nathan ran a hand over the binding. I started filling this out after Vanessa left, he said quietly. It felt important. Like maybe one day he'd want to know someone cared enough to remember these things. Amelia looked at him for a long moment. He won't have to wonder, Nathan. He'll know. Nathan swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the tiny pair of socks Max had kicked off. I used to think family was something you had or didn't. Blood. Marriage. Something legal. He looked up at her, eyes searching. But I'm starting to realize, family is just who stays. Who shows up. Who picks up the phone at 3 a.m. when the baby's sick and you're on your 5th breakdown. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. He was speaking not just of her presence, but to it. Honoring the quiet way she had stepped into his life without expectations or demands. Just showing up. Again and again. I don't know what this is, she whispered. But it feels real. Nathan nodded. It is. Silence filled the space between them. Max stirred and let out a tiny, satisfied sigh, his small hand reaching out and landing, by chance or fate, on top of both theirs, Amelia's and Nathan's. They looked down, then at each other. And something shifted. Not with a kiss or a grand declaration. Just a shared breath. A shared truth. That this, whatever it was becoming something deeper. Something steady. Something like home. They stayed like that for a while. The three of them. No titles, no pressure, no definitions. Just the warmth of a family born not out of obligation, but out of choice. Amelia helped put Max to bed, gently tucking him in and humming a lullaby she barely remembered learning. Nathan stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching her as if she were the final piece of a puzzle he didn't know was missing. When she turned, she caught him staring. "What?" she asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. He walked closer, his voice low. "I used to wonder what stability looked like. What it felt like. Not just for Max. For me. And now?" He didn't answer right away. He simply looked down at her, every wall in him gone, every armor stripped. "Now, I think it looks like you." The ballroom at the Astoria shimmered beneath a cascade of golden chandeliers. It was the annual Sullivan Enterprises Gala, an opulent affair where deals were made over champagne and reputations were built beneath tailored tuxedos and floor-length gowns. The elite of New York's business world mingled across polished marble floors, laughter echoing above the music of a live string quartet. But Nathan Sullivan wasn't watching the crowd. He stood at the edge of the stage near the grand piano, one hand in the pocket of his tailored suit, the other resting gently on the shoulder strap of the baby carrier across his chest. Inside it, Max was fast asleep in a miniature tuxedo that matched his father's. His cheeks were flushed with warmth, his lips parted in the soft breath of peaceful dreams. Nathan looked down and smiled, not just at his son, but at how far they'd come. Behind him, someone handed him a microphone. The MC gave a nod, and the room gradually hushed as Nathan stepped forward beneath the soft gold spotlight. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't need to. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but intimate. "Thank you for being here tonight, not just to celebrate our company's achievements, but to witness something more personal." A flicker of curiosity passed through the room. Nathan shifted Max gently in his carrier. "This time last year, I was lost. I had just buried my father. My marriage had collapsed. I'd taken over a company I wasn't ready to lead and became a father I didn't know how to be. And the truth is, I didn't think I was going to make it through that winter." He paused, letting the silence speak for him. But then something unexpected happened. At an airport gate, a woman gave up her seat. Just like that. No questions, no hesitation. She looked at me, disheveled, overwhelmed, with a screaming baby, and she gave me her place. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few turned to Amelia, seated at a nearby table in a deep sapphire gown, her hair curled just enough to frame her face. She didn't shift in her seat. She just watched him, eyes shining. "That woman is now my chief strategy officer," Nathan continued. "She's transformed this company more than any consultant or board advisor ever has. Not just with her mind, but with her heart, her presence, her courage to challenge the status quo." His voice softened. "She also changed my life. And my son's." He turned to look directly at Amelia. "You once told me that kindness doesn't need recognition. But tonight, I need you to know, what you gave that day wasn't just a seat on a plane. You gave a broken man the first sign of hope. You gave a little boy a chance at something better. And somewhere between marketing plans and baby bottles, between nap schedules and late-night strategy calls, you became our home." The room was still. All the noise of privilege and business had melted away. He stepped down from the stage slowly, weaving through the crowd, Max still sleeping soundly against his chest. The crowd parted instinctively as he moved toward her. Amelia rose to her feet, unsure if her legs would even hold her. Her hands trembled, and not from nerves, but from the swell of something enormous inside her. Love, yes. But more than that, recognition. This was no longer a man surviving. This was a man choosing. Nathan stopped in front of her. "I'm not proposing tonight," he said quietly, leaning in just close enough so only she could hear, his voice warm and real. "Not yet. Because what we're building, it's already sacred. And I want to grow it the right way." She exhaled, eyes glassy, heart full. "But I am making a promise," he continued, "that whatever the future brings, late-night feedings, boardroom battles, everything in between, I want to face it with you. Me, you, and Max. No matter what. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She nodded, just once. Yes, she whispered. That's all I've ever wanted. Not the perfect plan. Just the right people. He leaned in and kissed her, soft, certain, full of all the things they had carried and conquered. And as the orchestra picked up again, the crowd applauded. Not out of courtesy, but out of something genuine. Something beautiful they had witnessed take shape over time. A story not of perfection, but of persistence, kindness, and chosen love. In the months that followed, there would be many more chapters, some chaotic, others quiet. Morning messes, business wins, school applications, and second chances. But they would always remember that it all began at Gate 12, where she gave up a seat and unknowingly stepped into a life that was meant to be hers all along. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.